Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
All right, we are back in full effect in the Detroit is Different podcast studios, and I am here with someone that I've known for some years, and this person is definitely special to this neighborhood as she is my neighbor. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Hey, Kari, I'm great. How are you today?
Everything is everything.
Yes.
So as we get into this discussion, and I know a lot of these questions and answers to them, and you've answered this a lot, but your family in Detroit, what brought your family to the city of Detroit?
Well, my father was actually native born to Detroit back in 1927, believe it or not. His parents migrated here from the South in that first wave, the early wave of, Southerners who came to Michigan looking for opportunities for their family. So he was native born to Detroit in 1927. Mm-hmm. My mother came from Hope, Arkansas, believe it or not, and she and her aunt and uncle moved here as well, looking for opportunities. They had tried California, but they eventually settled here in Detroit.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So your father's family, what state?
Well, my father's mother was from North Carolina. His father was from Alabama. Yeah. And my mom, Hope, Arkansas.
Hope, Arkansas. Have you ever been to Hope, Arkansas?
Yes, I used to spend many summers in Hope, Arkansas with my great-grandfather, who was a plumber in Hope and raised chickens. So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you remember? Like, is that a big town, small town? What is that like?
It's a small town where, the culture of the South is very friendly. Mm-hmm. As many times as you walked up the road going to the store in the morning, you say good morning, you'd speak, and if you went up in the evening, you're good evening. People knew we were Cleveland's great-granddaughters, so people knew who we were. Mm-hmm. My mother had attended Yerger High School. That's the same high school President Clinton had attended as well, although he was a year older than her. It was a small town, but everybody knew everyone.
Okay. And coming here, where did your father's family live when they got here 27?
Yeah, so my father was raised on the east side in Black Bottom, actually. He used to ride us over in that area and say, my house used to be right here in the middle of the 75 freeway. And he would ride us through the neighborhood and try and give us some of the history of where he had grown up. He attended Miller High School, which is still over on the east side, and eventually went into the Army, served in the Korean War, and came back and found employment at Ford Motor Company over here in Manchester. Stood in line for days, I think, until finally they hired him, and he retired from Wixom Assembly Plant as an inspector out there on their line.
Okay, so the Manchester plant.
Yes.
Right up the street, NHP. Is that what led him to have interest in this neighborhood?
Well, after he left the Army, he had access to the GI Bill and some loans, and they were actually building brand new housing over here on LaSalle back in the 60s. So I think he was attracted to being a homeowner and owning a home that was newly constructed, and it would be our family was the only family who had ever lived in that house. I think that's what he was attracted to. In addition, that brings us to this neighborhood. At that time, this neighborhood was a family neighborhood. It was a beautiful neighborhood, tree-lined streets, many amenities, around, grocery stores, cleaners, you name it. We had it available to us. And Stewart Elementary, I believe, or McCullough actually, was the elementary school, and they eventually constructed Glazer. So my sister was one of the first students to attend even a brand new elementary school. So it had a lot of amenities here in this particular neighborhood where he was a homeowner. Small ranch, 3 bedrooms, corner lot, and life was good.
Okay, and your mom, what was your mom doing? What was her flow, and what did she think of the neighborhood at the time?
So my mom, by trade, was a cosmetologist. She did hair for many, many years at the House of Beauty. Eventually, she
House of Beauty. Now you just introduced something to me. Where was the House of Beauty?
House of Beauty was on the Boulevard, East Grand Boulevard.
Okay, so like it was like a pretty known shop at a point in time.
Yes, it was.
East Grand and what cross street?
Not too far from Grand River.
Okay.
Yeah, not too far from Grand River and the Y. So between, I guess I would say Rosa Parks and Grand River. I don't remember the cross street closest to it. Yeah, grew up in a beauty shop as a young child. So she was an entrepreneur. Eventually, she started working at Sanders Bakery. So she worked at Sanders Bakery for many, many years. Once she left the beauty shop, I think they started laying people off maybe in the 70s, and she returned to cosmetology at that time. And then she worked at the Glamour House, which was also on the boulevard, but it was in one of the Motown houses. So it's now demolished.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, like, during this time, what were the styles that your mom, like, did you always have your hair, so they say, whipped, pressed, and done up all the time?
I did. And, in fact, I had a perm at the age of 4. So my mom was a beautician. She was up on the latest technology at the time. Having a perm was something big, an easier way to manage hair. We did not know back then, some of the health concerns associated with the chemicals in perms. But yes, our hair was always well maintained. We were always well maintained as children. So again, life was good.
Okay. And as you say that everything was flowing in this mix of what your mom's doing in cosmetology, what your father's doing with Ford, what was it like for you, brothers and sisters, and growing up in this neighborhood?
Right. Well, I had one sister. There were 2 of us. She was a year older than I was. This neighborhood was teeming with families. There was a playground directly across the street from our house, Linwood. I'm sorry, the name of it was Fort LaSalle Playground, or LaSalle Fort Playground, where we spent many, many summer days playing with the other children who we went to school with. The neighborhood families, most of their children attended Glazer. It wasn't like it is now, where parents, had to shop for the best education. It was locally available right here in the neighborhood. We went to school. It was kids walked to school. We played together. There was a lady named Rose Smith who made herself the attendant of that playground. She made sure that we had everything from the city, from the swimmobile to the bookmobile to hula hoops and basketballs and checkers sets to play with. And she would organize, galas for us, or play dates for us, or events for us, or bike rakes for us. But even without Miss Smith's resources, we were pretty resourceful as kids, and we would self-organize: baseball, kickball, kick-off shoes, parachuting out of the swings, tag on the monkey bars. We just played from sun up until the street lights came on, and that was really a true culture here in this neighborhood. So,
and most of the other children of the neighborhood, did they go to the schools in the neighborhood? Were you interconnected like that? Like, did just the relationships carry over?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Back when I attended school here in this neighborhood, most of the children who lived in this neighborhood attended that local school. So Glazer was the elementary, right? The K through 5. Then you had Longfellow, which was a middle school. You had eventually Region 5 Middle School, which later became Halley Magnet Middle School, and moved to another location. But it was the old school on Dexter. It's Joy Prep now, but that used to be Region 5 Middle School, and that's where I went to middle school. And then when you went to high school, Central was the neighborhood high school, but we did have application schools at the time. So my sister and I and some of our friends tested into Cass Technical High School, and that's where we went to high school at. So, but back in the day, kids generally went to school in their neighborhoods, whereas now children go to school all over. So parents pick the best educational opportunities they can find for their children. Sometimes they choose to educate them locally. Our neighborhood now has 2 charter schools, no DPS schools in the Hope Village neighborhood, which is what we call this neighborhood. It's New Paradigm for Education, Glazer Academy at the old Glazer building. And then there's Joy Preparatory Academy, and it's managed by Leona Group for Fair Estate. The charters through Fair Estate.
Okay. So this look and feel, because so much has changed, and we're going to get into those discussions, is right now you are a member of the Hope Village Community Initiative in designing the vision and plan for what will happen here in our community. But let's talk a little bit about what was and some of those changes too. For your family, how long did your father stay in the home on LaSalle?
Till he died. So he stayed. My mother preceded him in death. My mom died back in 1990. My father and my sister died in 99, and my father passed away in 2000.
Wow. So it was just so that just back to back, just like, I guess, starting and ending kind of that decade. Things transitioned. And that definitely is, the 90s changed the landscape of this neighborhood in many ways as well.
Yes, it did.
As I'm from this community, and I remember what it was like for me from the 80s to the 90s and through the 90s. What were some of the things that you saw change? And then also, what was it that brought you back to this community as a place for your family and you to set up and place roots here?
Yeah, well, as I said, my dad lived here until he passed away in 2000, and I never moved far away. I stayed in close proximity because I had my father and my sister here till she passed, and I had my great uncle and my great aunt until she passed, who were in close proximity. So they lived on Doris, right off of Dexter Street. So my roots were here. When me and my husband got married, I lived just across Davison on LaSalle in one of those apartment buildings. And then after my mother passed away, we went and lived with my father for a few years until we got our own home on LaBelle Street. So I was always close by, close to the family, close to this neighborhood and my roots here. I guess it was family. And after my parents and my sister transitioned, it became very important to me to preserve their legacy here in this neighborhood. And as you say, in the 90s and early 2000s, this neighborhood had started to experience the impact of disinvestment, loss of jobs. The school system was transitioning. It had not fully transitioned into what we know it to be today, but it was on the decline. And those issues became something that I wanted to fight for, something I wanted to advocate for, and things that I wanted to see improved. I think the biggest, most visible change was the playground that I had grown up on had become seriously dilapidated and dangerous. The playground that I grew up on, playing from sun up to streetlights came on, my children couldn't go there. They couldn't go there alone, most definitely. And if I took them, we wouldn't stay long because, people had started doing other things there. It had become a dangerous place. So one of the first things I did was God put it on my heart to reactivate the block club. So at this time, I was living on LaBelle Street, and a number of neighbors, we knew each other. We decided to come together and reactivate our block club. And we did.
Around what time? What year is this?
Oh, that had to be about in 2001, not long after my father passed away. Another neighbor, Shelley Shepard, Miss Shepard's daughter, she and Hope Matlock, maybe in the 2000s, had hosted a neighborhood block party around the 4th of July. And after that, I started reaching out to neighbors, writing a newsletter, and organizing a block club. And we integrated their 4th of July block club party into our block club activities. We had a sidewalk sale one year. And then I suggested to the group that we turn our attention to the Ford LaSalle playground that had become seriously dilapidated. At that time, Ms. Shepard told me that Focus Hope was convening some neighbors to work on the playground. So I ended up being introduced to Focus Hope's Community and Economic Development Manager, Ms. Debbie Fisher, and I became the coordinator for the Ford LaSalle Park Revitalization Committee. And it was our goal to revitalize that park, which we were able to do. It took 10 years altogether to see everything done that we envisioned, from new playscape equipment to new swing sets. They installed a half a court basketball, some benches and tables at that park. So a very, very fine group of neighbors worked together to see those improvements happen at the Ford LaSalle Park. The last phase, they installed the swing set.
So this all started from true grassroots organizing and neighbor to neighbor connections and relationships.
Yes.
And it took time, as things do take time. But what were you learning yourself, and what else was going on as you were a mother? Like, what was going on in your life as you're adding the dynamic of taking charge of a block club and leading a block club, because real life is happening too. So like, what else is happening in your real life as you take on a new dynamic in it?
Wow. So interesting parallels as my family was growing, my children were growing up. My husband and I were able to get our own home, our first home, through the nuisance abatement program. And many people may remember that program. Back in the day, the city of Detroit had this program called nuisance abatement. And if you could find a home that was open at the doors and windows, and tax delinquent, you could put in an application to rehab that house as a nuisance. So the city would give you, I can't remember how long, maybe it was a year or 2 years, 3 years, to rehab this house. You were only allowed to bring the systems up to code. So your electrical, your gas, your plumbing, bring those things up to code, because the original owners could come back and redeem the property. It was 3 years. They had 3 years where they could come back and redeem their property, pay their back taxes. They would have to reimburse you for any improvements that you had done to the systems. Now, if you started to do paneling or improvements that were purely cosmetic, then they were not liable to pay those back. But only the plumbing, the heating, the roofing, the electrical systems, if they wanted to get their property back, they could.
Okay.
And then you would buy it for $1. You would buy the property for $1.
Yeah. So in taking this on, and you went into getting this home, which that's a whole nother dynamic at the same time of how many children?
I had 3 children, 2 boys
children.
and 1 girl. Yeah.
And a husband. And where were you working at the time?
At the time, I was working at National City Bank. I was a bank teller. My sister, who she was a childhood diabetic, and so at this particular time, she had started dialysis, so she had kidney failure. So I was working part-time, and I was taking her to dialysis 3 days a week, and she was watching the kids when I was working. So we had that partnership in addition to my husband, who at the time he was painting. He's a finished painter, and so he was painting. Yep.
And this flow of family, work, and then also taking on a new asset for the family, but an asset that ties together other liabilities and responsibility other than just, paying for, like, it's not like a mortgage. You have to actually put some investment into this property.
Yes.
Kind of cross your fingers that the other people don't come back.
Right.
And you're now engaging the block club and starting that up.
Yes, and so I just felt driven, and as I said, I had neighbors who were willing to come together, and they saw the value of organizing ourselves and just doing small things to get to know each other better and support each other, and to have fun activities for our children or our grandchildren on the block, and a sense of community pride. We were happy. We were proud of who we are and our history in this neighborhood. The Shepherds had been a part of the Lodge, LDLO, Lodge, Davison, Linwood, and Oakman Block Club Association for homeowners and renters. They had tried to attract some resources for the neighborhood back in the day, and eventually from the For the Sale Park Committee and me starting to enlarge my network through Focus Hope, I came in contact with the LDLO and the Oakman Boulevard Community Association. And some of the members from Oakman Boulevard Community Association, Miss Mary Simpson, God bless her, and rest her soul, and Miss Pat Carter, Miss Maddie, Miss Judy, they kind of took me under their wings, and they showed me the ropes, how to go down to city council and talk to certain people, how to go to Wayne County Commissioner and talk to certain people to raise awareness about the Fort LaSalle Park and to advocate for resources to improve the park. So eventually we were able to get money both from the city of Detroit and from Wayne County to improve Fort LaSalle Park. So they took me under their wings. I eventually ended up being president for the LDLO for like 10 years. 10 years I served as president, and I had a small core group of residents, women, many seniors who supported my efforts. I eventually got hired at Focus Hope in 2007 in the Community and Economic Development Department, where I did community building and organizing around both the Fort LaSalle Playground, Glazer Elementary, and we started engaging people in the neighborhood. I'm very proud to say, I don't know if any of your listeners have been in the neighborhood a while, but through Focus Hope and some of their staff before I came, and me being president of the LDLO, we were able to advocate with the city to clear Pasadena. So Pasadena Street from Linwood to LaSalle used to be a dumping ground. There was so many piles of illegally dumped materials all up and down that block, so much so that the people who lived on Pasadena couldn't even come outside and sit on their porches and enjoy, their homes that way. But we were able to advocate and work with the city to get all of that dumping removed. In fact, one of my first community projects with Debbie Fisher was on Linwood in Pasadena, across from the grill there. We cleaned up that little corner. I always had the idea that you go to the hardest hit, the worst area, and you try and improve it in order to change that paradigm. And so that was one of my first projects in the neighborhood, cleaning up that corner. And when we saw Pasadena clear up through our work at Focus Hope, and I'm just going on, but we boarded up and cleaned up so many houses. We cleaned up a lot of illegal dumping in the neighborhood. We eventually began to establish a garden in response to illegal dumping on Linwood and Kendall, and so many houses that we boarded and secured that were vacant, open, and dangerous. A lot of them now have been demolished because, there were resources allocated in this neighborhood to demolish some of these vacant, dangerous houses. But we sort of stabilized it. We kept it from tipping far, far to the left. Many of the seniors in the block club would complain as houses became vacant about their safety, and we responded with many volunteers without whose help we wouldn't have been able to accomplish so much. But we kind of stemmed the tide of blight in this neighborhood.
So that transition as Focus Hope, this is around the time when you were hired in, we met.
Yes.
As you're one of founding member of Focus Hope, and Eleanor Jositis, that's rest in peace. That's one of my big homies.
Yes.
And I don't know what, but she was open to working with me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And she definitely, for whatever reason, would listen to some of my ideas. And I did a music festival there.
Yes.
And that kind of started our connection and our relationship.
Yes.
And in that, I learned some of the culture of Focus Hope, living over here for so long, just like you. Focus Hope being an asset in our community, but a lot of the neighbors sometimes don't even engage with Focus Hope too.
Yeah.
What was it like joining and seeing that and having an understanding for it, and then also advocating for the neighborhood too, because there are so many people that love that banner, love that name, but don't necessarily know this neighborhood that much.
Yeah.
That work with it.
Yeah, that's true. So I think the first thing that really attracted me to Focus Hope back in the day was their mission. They, paraphrasing, pledged intelligent and practical action to overcome racism, poverty, and justice. And Father Cunningham, I guess, was an English professor, so I too majored in English, and just the language of that mission inspired me, and I thought that it was timeless in its relevance, both when they, wrote it back in '68 after the rebellion, and even in 2007, it still seemed so relevant and poignant. And so I had the privilege to meet a lot of dedicated people who worked tirelessly to promote that mission, to work with the local community and other stakeholders in the Metro Detroit area to fulfill that mission. So it was great. It was a great experience when I first came to Focus Hope and started working under the leadership of Debbie Fisher, who was visionary and just doing great things. She had created a strategic plan around community assets, and with the goal of building community around those assets, connecting people and engaging people in the future development of this neighborhood. That was before we had ever even imagined a Hope Village initiative, but we were working with the city of Detroit, hosting their minor home repair program in this area. And we had the same boundaries as we eventually named for Hope Village. And in those boundaries, through some of this work and this activities, we just began to build a very strong network of people and had relationships with a variety, faith-based, the schools, neighbors, businesses, and we just began to lay a foundation for moving this neighborhood forward.
So with it, because just being here, the community has changed, as there still are many, I think, I would say, like some of my senior neighbors, Mrs. Kraft, Mrs. Kraft made it to 99, and she just passed away recently, my neighbor. There are many seniors that own a lot of the housing stock.
Yes.
And then there are some prospect buyers that own some of the housing stock. There are some renters here. But the landscape of sometimes the transient neighbor, what exists here, things are changing. And that asset of Focus Hope itself is changing.
Yeah.
It never was really always knowing that it was, in my neighborhood and being seen as an asset. You being a part of Focus Hope, how has that changed some of the relationship to, with your block club members and how they associated with it and the perspective of it and the work of Focus Hope? Because it still sometimes can be overwhelming to have an organization like that in this community and just the relationship.
Right. Well, I think, many people still recognize Focus Hope as a resource for issues. So their food program still feeds, I believe, 43,000 people a month.
Definitely.
In the Tri-County area, they have an early childhood education program that is well recognized for its excellence. And then they have their workforce development program. So they continue to train people in certain skills, from truck driving to they have robotics classes and manufacturing apprenticeships still at Focus Hope. So for the person who is willing to or has the time to invest in training, there are opportunities there. Some young people are hard pressed. They need money now. Some of them don't have the time. They need to be paid while they're trained. And so some of them are just not in a position because of their responsibilities to really take advantage of some of those opportunities. But yes, Focus Hope is changing. So Focus Hope decided a couple of years ago that it wasn't going to continue the community and economic development work that my department did. We had become the Hope Village Initiative, a department in Focus Hope that had a collaborative impact model. So they layered within that organization several departments: the Center for Children, the Center for Working Families, Community and Economic Development, Community Involvement, Community Arts, all up under one umbrella. And we had a goal that by 2031, 100% of the people living in this neighborhood will be educationally well prepared, economically self-sufficient, living in a safe, supportive environment. It was a huge undertaking. It was as they say, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And we put our efforts together to make that happen. So Focus Hope, wanting to get back to their roots, I guess, decided that, they wouldn't continue this work. So in November, the community and economic development work, neighborhood revitalization work transitioned, and we separated from Focus Hope, and we formed, with their blessing, a brand new organization called Hope Village Revitalization.
So Hope Village Revitalization, and let me, for everybody listening, right now I am a board member on Hope Village Revitalization, just kind of through the relationship with Stephanie. So it's like Stephanie calls, it's like, yeah, I'm down. So I'm a board member on this, and my post will be for 2 years, and then from that, the community itself will elect what members will be on this board, and what will happen in this vision, not just till 2031, but over and beyond.
Yes.
So Hope Village Revitalization, still kind of sticking back to the story of you. Right now, with the experience you've had with Focus Hope now for over a decade plus.
Yes. 12 years.
Where do you see this work going with this organization? So just speak less about what it is and more so just your emotions and your thoughts about what opportunities you think Hope Village Revitalization can offer residents such as myself and you and our neighbors.
Yeah. So I think what our organization can offer this community is a way to be a part of something, a way to improve the neighborhood that they live in, and to be informed and to be able to direct sort of the work that goes on here. So back in 2016, before Focus Hope started to change their direction, this community came together. We had over 500 people come together and craft this strategic vision and plan. It is a huge document. It is a very dense document. And Hope Village Revitalization, because it has been structured to be a membership organization, meaning that by bylaws, anybody who lives in this neighborhood is automatically a member of Hope Village Revitalization Community Development Corporation. We will be informing the community at the first town hall in 2 years, start on March 19th, 2020. We're going to have a town hall meeting. We're going to bring several people before the community and introduce Hope Village Revitalization and let people know that they are a part of something big. With regard to the development of this neighborhood, so I already talked about how through the community and economic development work at Focus Hope, we were able to sort of stem the tipping point of the blight and abandonment in this neighborhood. When monies became available for demolition, originally Hope Village, this neighborhood was not included in the neighborhoods that would receive funding for demolitions. I believe because we had reported to the city of Detroit for years lists of abandoned houses. Then we had a gentleman working with us named Jarrell Harris, who showed the city our plan to attack and to rebuild housing in this area. We believe that they chose to share some of the residual money they had for the hardest hits areas and began to demolish some properties here. Now, and we thank them for that. Many of the properties that were demolished really needed to be demolished. There were a few that were still good that probably could have stayed standing, but overall, the demolitions were needed in this area.
And that's the demolitions just throughout the city of Detroit. I think it's one of those challenging. It's one of those challenging topics, because on one end, yes, there are many properties on my block alone that needed to be demolished, but moving forward, just politically, many people feel about the transparency and the execution of it was not inclusive of the neighbors for the work. and the vision of how it was done. A home was just torn down. Funny, Mr. Reese's home, like one of the places, the best place to hide and go seek was in front of her bushes. But but yeah, that home was just torn down across the street from me. So it's one of those things that was needed, and another provocative topic when it comes to how people feel about the mayor's office, because some people are like love it and some people just feel like it was kind of voiceless.
Yeah.
So when things like this happen, and you being engaging with so much of the neighborhood and the neighbors, how do you even find the balance to work sometimes and partner with organizations or government officials or maybe even agencies that the neighborhood itself may have many issues with also?
Well, in those cases, we try to sort of be a bridge between both neighborhood voice, which is very important, and city officials as representatives. So by allowing the neighborhood to interact and share their preferences, their desires, and inform our representatives, we hope that those people in power will make better decisions, right? That they will become aware, that they will not only just have their arguments, but also look for other alternative solutions that benefit everyone. So, yes, I think the topic of demolition is a very precarious topic, and I do agree, like you, that it could have been more transparent. There could have been more engagement, more direction. I know that there are still some houses standing that definitely need to come down, and others that have been demolished that structurally appear to be very sound and should have remained standing. However, I also remember in my job riding block by block, looking at the neighborhood that I grew up in and seeing all of the houses that had gone vacant through foreclosures or, whatever. And it used to literally make me sick emotionally, mentally, depressed and sad. It would take me a long time to get over it. And that's why I think I worked so hard to make sure that the houses were at least boarded up and cleaned up. And our community arts department, eventually we came up with the idea of placing the big, beautiful pictures of our children on these houses as a exhibition space and a placeholder to say that there's something coming after this and something worth looking toward and something to look forward to. And so we did those things. And through the strategic plan, looking at land and vacant land in neighborhoods and how it could be an asset and what were some of the ideas around utilizing the vacant land either to form gardens or places of beauty and nature in the neighborhood. Detroit Future Cities even had grants and some instructions where neighbors could develop these vacant properties, butterfly gardens and all types of things. So how do we take these pieces of land and turn them into an asset for the community? So that's the work we did. And so it is a coming together. I think, again, Hope Village Revitalization, this new community development corporation, is poised to look to the future of this neighborhood. So our offices is a formerly burnt out 2-family flat building that has been rehabbed to LEED Platinum standards as far as energy efficiencies, water retention. We have 2 rain gardens in front. We have solar panels on the house. It's a 2-family flat, so the upper flat is rented out to a Focus Hope employee. He's within a block's walking distance of his job, and then our office is in the lower flat. And we plan to use this house as a showcase of what is possible, a place where people can come in and see, what does solar look like? Is this possible? Is it attainable to some lower level like this? These are the benefits of LED lighting throughout your houses, or faucet fixtures that preserve water, that help you preserve some of your water usage. We want to be a place where people are free to drop by, learn about the things that's going on at the LaSalle house, and get an idea of what is possible, from very high end to very small things you can do to lower your energy bills, or or preserve water, or manage your water runoff.
So you went right into what was going to be my next question, and we can kind of pick up and carry on there. What projects and programming will Hope Village Revitalization be launching this year?
Yeah, so this year, Focus Hope Revitalization will continue a weekly farmers market that's funded through Kresge program, Fresh and Local Food System. So on the corner of Woodrow Wilson and Oakman at the Cool City Parks, starting in June, we will have a weekly farmers market where people can come and get locally grown food, and many, many other vendors that sell all kinds of crafts and food items. They have said that the farmers market is more like a block party. We have music, we have performances, we have yoga, we have belly dancing, we have children's activities, adult activities. So it is a designation spot right here in our neighborhood. And we will continue that work, growing our fresh and local food systems, engaging some of the community farmers and gardeners there and other vendors. In addition to that, we're going to work on creating more sustainable multifamily housing with to rehab, to improve energy poverty. Our aspirations are to have some community owned solar in the neighborhood, and those are the things we're going to focus on in this first year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm definitely in support. So much of me is always people. So, my relationship with you is my relationship with the organization.
Thank you, Kari.
And I think the work falls in place when it's people that have intentionality. And one of the number one things is you live over here. So your vested interest is the vested interest of this community. And not just you got angels living over here too. You got little homies in effect, and little homies not in effect.
Yes.
Grandma Stephanie.
I think the first week in the LaSalle house, I had such a great sense of peace because our office space is diagonal from the house I grew up in. So it gives me a great sense of purpose to be working there and to be part of an organization that is that it is intentionally trying to move this neighborhood into what a future could look like. We will be re-engaging the community, which is very important, through town hall meetings. Right now, they're intended to be quarterly. Again, I say the first town hall meeting is going to be March 19th. If you're listening, young, old, everybody is included. We need you to come. We need you to hear about this organization that you're automatically a member of. If you're interested in putting down roots and creating a place for you and your family that will be prosperous and healthy in so many ways, then come out. We need to hear from you. We want to connect with you. We have great things going on. If you want to stop in the LaSalle House, that's 14030 LaSalle Boulevard, and just learn more about this organization and the things that we're doing in the neighborhood, you're welcome to stop by and visit us. And we would love to greet you and meet you and give you a tour.
Yep, and I'm gonna be there. So with that, I kind of will get into the classic Detroiters different questions. This has been a fun, cool interview.
Thank you.
So
Carly.
the classic questions are first, what was your very first car?
Mine.
And what year did you get it? What year, make, and model was it?
So our very first car was a car my sister and I shared. It was a 225 Buick convertible when we were in high school.
Okay,
so
you had to share a ride.
I had to share with my sister, but it was all good.
Was it? Did you guys draw straws for like who got to drive and go where, or did you guys just have to go everywhere together?
Well, we were very close, my sister and I. She was the oldest, so she got to drive the most of the time. But I was always in the group. Us and our friends, we would go all over the city to different places, having fun. We would go to Canada and do kart racing, go-kart driving. We would be just everywhere. We just
driving
had
to go drive.
Driving to go drive. We had a good time.
All right. Do you remember the first place you guys went when you got it?
School.
Okay.
To Cass.
Okay.
Cass Technical High School.
All right. You are the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 3 songs. What songs you playing?
Wow. So I would have to say Ain't No Stopping Us Now. Growing up back then, I would have to play that one. I would play some Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm mixing it up. And
what song from Earth,
which song? Boogie Wonderland.
Okay, there we go.
Boogie Wonderland. Partying. Yes, we would be partying. It's the fireworks. I spent many summers watching the fireworks. And then, of course, we would have to top it off with something from Motown. Which one? I don't know. Something from maybe the Temptations or...
And you partying?
We gonna party. Yeah. Something from the Temptations or something. Something.
They don't have a lot of party songs.
Well... But they were cool. They were cool. So, yeah.
Standing on the top of Rick James.
Yes, Rick James. Yes, they
on the top.
They paved the way for
Rick
him.
James.
Yes.
Also that the classic bridge in Super Freak where he's like Temptation 6. They was probably in the studio that same day.
Yeah. What would you play, Carby?
Let's see. What would I play? Because nobody's asked me that. Let's see. I would definitely want to play Good Life because I think that you want to play like something that with that dance music feel.
Mm-hmm.
I would play. I'll play Boss Up and Get This Money, and then I would play. What else? My Eyes Don't Cry No More at the end. Because people need to hustle.
That's all right. That's good. I could get with that playlist.
All right.
Definitely.
Last question.
Yeah.
Well, even before last question, my relationship, she was my big homie. What was your relationship like meeting Eleanor for you?
Wow. Eleanor was very impressive. She always shared her story. She always let you know she would let the people know the cost of doing this work, working with Father Cunningham and raising a family and some of the challenges that she met. And then she would always invite you to be an ambassador for this work. And she would share some stories of encouragement as well. And she immediately put you on board. Eleanor was someone to watch. She could work a room. She knew how to get in there and talk to people and network. So I learned a lot from watching Eleanor Jositis. I was very fortunate to get to work with her, and she would always help the young people think about their goals and their leadership and their aspirations. So Eleanor was well loved and a dynamic leader in the community.
Well, I usually ask who would you name Woodward after? But with those words, maybe we can, I know a couple people, they change names and street names around and honor street names. Maybe we push for like a petition to name that block of LaSalle after her.
Yeah. Or
From,
even
from Oakman through to the park.
maybe I know Father Cunningham wanted his work to continue. He didn't want any streets named after him, but I don't recall Eleanor objecting. So yes, that might be a good petition to submit to see if we can get the street name changed to Eleanor Boulevard.
That would be real cool. That would be real cool right there. So thank you so much.
All right, Kari.
We're
Thank
going to
you.
get you again.
All right. Peace. Thank
Peace.
you.
Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.